Joining me now for further discussion on the crisis gripping the East African area is journalist Harun Maruf of Voice of America's Somali service. Harun, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
So the UN has started airlifting food to some of the most inaccessible areas in Somalia, especially southern Somalia. What's the likelihood that this food will get to the people?
Well, the plan is to airlift this food to Mogadishu, where there is 9,000 African Union troops protecting the government. So at least in these areas, there are IDP, internal displaced camps, where people can come, and the chances are that they will be fed in these camps. And large number of people are coming to Mogadishu for the past few weeks, thousands of them coming into these camps every day. The stories we have heard are really very horrific. A family who lost some of their children, they just abandoned their children halfway on their way to Mogadishu because they have to save those who can walk and able to reach these feeding camps. A family who, because they could not get anything else to eat, were eating dead meat from cows. A family who lost a couple of hundred cattle within few months, and were just few weeks ago slaughtered their last cow, not to eat but just to sell for an amount of money for one day's meal. So the stories are very horrific.
They really are, from what we are hearing, but horrific as they seem, especially in the areas that people don't have access to, the aid agencies or media. Is it an accurate depiction of what we're hearing, or it's potentially worse? Because Al-Shabaab controls that.
The situation is much worse because, as you said, media do not have access to these areas, and media can show really the true picture of the magnitude of the problem. So we are not seeing the full scale of the disaster, but speaking on to the people who are coming from this area, the situation is really very graphic. Aid agencies have been warning of this drought and this potential, this famine now being declared for months now, but the international community have not been doing enough really to make awareness, to raise funds, and to warn about this disaster now that we're seeing.
And even if they could have averted or maybe acted more expeditiously, with Al-Shabaab having such a firm grip on some areas, the most heavily drought-stricken area, what could they really do? Al-Shabaab is, as we know, just recently stopped all agencies coming in, or most from coming in, and also accusing the aid agencies now of politicizing the situation. That is really not that bad.
You are absolutely right. There's not much they could do, although we have a number of aid agencies that are already operating in Al-Shabaab areas, including ICRC, including MSF, including UNICEF. But Al-Shabaab has been emphasizing on and restricting their movement, so there's not much they could have done in terms of sending food to these needy people. But what they could have done is, at least there could have been a much better preparation in dealing with this situation. Now there could have been safe, protected areas along the border between Kenya and Ethiopia and Somalia, and between Ethiopia and Somalia, so that at least in those areas, the Somali government controls between these two border areas with Ethiopia and with Kenya. So safe areas could have been set up in these places for people to reach easily, instead of going further hundreds of kilometers into Kenya and Ethiopia.
Is Al-Shabaab offering any kind of options in terms of how it can help those who are needing help, even though it's, of course, telling all the other additional aid agencies not to come in?
It seems that Al-Shabaab, when they have seen the scale of the problem, they do not want it to hide it anymore. But on the other hand, they do not want this to expose them to dangerous infiltration. That's what they are claiming on their side. So they believe that if the international community scales up this effort and the international community sees the magnitude of the problem, then people would advocate, governments would advocate for a much stronger intervention, perhaps military intervention, perhaps setting up these protected areas along the border. And Al-Shabaab feels vulnerable to this. They don't want it to open that door to themselves because they're
fighting
vulnerable.
for their own survival at this point.
Exactly. But on the other hand,
I have to stop you. I'm so sorry, we are out of time. Harun Maruf of VOA's Somali service joining us here on In Focus.